I am really excited to be here today. I know enough people are asking why. And I think there's two answers, at least two major answers. One is during the last bunch of years that I've been upstairs, whether it be for MLB or the D-backs, Angels, or Red Sox, it was a wonderful opportunity to stay close to the game, watch the game from upstairs. It was very difficult, increasingly so, to sit there and think about what's going on downstairs. When you're an advisor, it's something I enjoyed, but I always had this thought, man, it's more fun downstairs. I did get a fresh observation point for how difficult front office work is. I got better feel for scouting and player development, all that thing, but my heart was always in the dugout. And to that, when the first inquiry was made about the White Sox, I perked up because being frustrated being upstairs, but more particularly, I think all managers would understand this. I think everybody would understand this, how rare it is to get an opportunity to manage a team that's this talented and this close to winning. Most of the time your chances are the opposite. So the combination of looking forward to getting back down there and checking myself, to have the energy and all that stuff, and the White Sox making the call with a chance to win sooner rather than later. I'm excited that they made that choice and looking forward to what's ahead.
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Tony. We appreciate your opening remarks. We've got a lot of questions, obviously, in the queue. So as we said, please keep your hands raised and raise your hand, but also please identify who you're asking your question to, whether it's of Rick or whether it's of Tony. So we're going to go ahead and open up the questions now. The first question is from Scott Merkin of MLB.com. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, Tony, how long did it take you to figure out you wanted to do this once you were approached about the White Sox job? And what kind of adjustments do you see, even though you've been involved in the game, what kind of adjustments do you see that will need to be made in your repertoire from when you managed last to now?
I think as far as the timing, I was surprised when I first got the call. And the second conversation, I had thought about it more and had my reservations based on why I retired after 2011, and was challenged about those reservations. And the more I thought about it, and this is like the next day or two, I seriously thought, if you put exactly what I mentioned before, being upstairs for, 9 years, watching the game closely, I've described to my friends as torture because you're seeing it and you can't do anything about it. So soon thereafter, I realized I was either going to have to stop complaining about being upstairs or go downstairs. And if you're going to go downstairs and you have an opportunity like you have with the White Sox, that's when it got serious. And now, what do I expect to change? I think the more you think it changes, the more it stays the same. I watch closely all the postseason. Primarily, it's our team against their team. There's a score. I do think the question that's asked most often is the wealth of information that helps you prepare. And I embrace it. I know our coaching staff will. I think people that watched our clubs the years that I managed know that we were always information seekers. How that factors into game decisions, I think you take the value of that information and maybe have a better chance to put players in a position to succeed. And going to be open about that, but I do know that, and I think I have a good experience at this in the sense that once a game starts, it's a very volatile experience. Players, not machines, how they vary, how the game may maybe changing within innings, much less series, game to series. That's why I think it's more important. It's very important that we use the term observational analytics. Once you got all that preparation, you got to watch the game and be ready to, so I think the difference is the preparation will be better. Looking forward to it, but the actual game decision making will be much like what I learned. You watch the game and figure out how to put people in a position to win.
Next question is James Fegan from The Athletic.
Tony, in the past, you have expressed your disagreement with players kneeling for the anthem and protest. And at the start of this season, 5 of the players that you'll be managing going forward kneeled for the anthem. How do you kind of see like you would be able to navigate that disagreement and still build a relationship of respect and trust with the players you're taking over with?
Well, it's a good question. I like the way you ended, build a relationship, because that's what the first priority every year is for staff and I, to build a relationship of respect and trust with the team. And you want to get that family feeling. I know in 2016, when the first issue occurred, my initial instincts were all about, respecting the flag and the anthem and what America stands for. There's been a lot goes on in a very healthy way since 2016. And not only do I respect, but I applaud the awareness that's come into not just society, but especially into sports. If you talk about specifically baseball, I applaud and would support the fact that they are now identifying the injustices, especially on the racial side. And as long as it's peacefully protested and sincere, and what I'm learning more and more, like with the Players Alliance, and especially with the White Sox, when your protests actually have action-oriented results, way that you're going to impact to make things better, I'm all for it. At the same time, I do believe if you check White Sox, A's, and the Cardinals, I can name you, at least, the White Sox, whether it was Chet Lemon or Junior Moore or Harold Baines, and you go to the A's with Dave Stewart, Dave Henderson, Ricky Henderson, Dave Parker. You go to St. Louis with Ray Lanford, Brian Jordan, Reggie Sanders. I mean, I'll take my chance if you talk to any one of those people. There's not a racist bone in my body. I do not like injustice, and I would support exactly what I mentioned. Anything that's peacefully done and sincerely thought of, and especially with an action at the end of it, will not be a problem.
Next question is from Vinny Duber of NBC Sports Chicago.
Tony, in a similar vein there, that's the important stuff that James was talking about. But in the last 9 years, obviously, we've seen players kind of grow in the way they like to express themselves on the field and have fun, be it bat flips or celebrations of any kind. The White Sox obviously have a guy in Tim Anderson who's been at the forefront of that. What is your approach to kind of letting those guys show their personalities on the field?
Well, lots changed. I can remember when Carlton Fisk, challenged Deion Sanders. I do believe at the basis that sportsmanship is important. Respect for the game and your opponents. I do believe in that. You don't run up a score, things like that. But here's what I see different. Every year, and this has been going on for a while, even went on when I was managing, there's more and more attention being paid to who does good and who does bad in the game. I mean, you don't do anything right or wrong in a clutch moment that you don't get celebrated for or criticized for. So I've seen how that has impacted players emotionally. A great example was Eck all those years when he had that very expressive fist pump when he got the third out. That's a lot like what you see today. And I always reasoned it that if it's sincere, I didn't have a problem with it. And what I see now is that with players that are being more exuberant, I take, Tim Anderson for an example. Now it's people showing that, hey, I'm coming through. In fact, Major League Baseball is encouraging them to do so. And if I see that it's sincere and it's directed towards the game, that's displaying the kind of emotion that you want. You know, as a coach, what you want to do is you want to get players passionately involved with the competition. And if you do that, that's how you get exciting games, you're entertaining. So the fact that now that we're encouraging players to be more expressive, you know, I'm going to treat like Tim, for example, part of the family. And you know, the only thing I say, and even some of the people I talk to, if your team celebrates and that their team celebrates, then neither team can be upset when you see celebrations, as long as everybody's doing it sincerely.
Next question, also from NBC Sports Chicago, Adam Hogue.
Hey, Tony, how much were these conversations that, you know, we're asking you now brought up in the interview process and addressed? And have you had a chance to talk to Tim Anderson at all? If not, how do you plan on going about that in the future here?
No, I have not talked to any White Sox player. But once this thing got serious, had numerous conversations with Rick, Kenny Williams. In fact, we had more with Kenny and Rick after it got started than with Jerry. And in depth, everything, what it was about, you know, how you manage, what you think applies. But since family is so important and the culture is so important, the issues that we just discussed in these last two calls, whether it's my feeling on you know, protesting racial injustice, or whether it's celebrating something that you've accomplished on the field. We discussed that at length, and you heard from me how I feel about it, and I think that the organization feels that I'll be sensitive and be supportive, and also, you know, I'll have my opinions that I'll present to the players, but I'll respect them and stand behind them.
Next question from The Athletic, John Greenberg.
Yeah, this question's for Rick. Rick, how surprised were you that Tony, you know, was into this idea from what you told us from the beginning? Like you said, you know, prefacing this, that, you know, this wasn't kind of how you phrased what you were looking for. So what was it like on your end as this kind of shifted gears?
You know, initially, I think I was a little surprised, just given that I knew not only obviously that he was retired, but I knew that other clubs had reached out previously and were rebuffed. But then as I thought about the allure of this job, you know, some of the reasons I mentioned at the start of this call and others that we discussed on the previous call, when we had the opening initially, it makes all the sense in the world. And the fact that we progressed along that path, you know, the logic behind it seems to flow.
Next question is Bruce Levine from 670 The Score. Go ahead, Bruce.
Tony, congratulations, first of all.
Thank you.
Thanks. As far as what the hard questions you had to ask yourself before you decided to take this job, where do you think you're at compared to 10 years ago as far as processing things? And knowing that you have to manage 200 games a year, did you have to ask yourself whether you had the, you know, just the whole physical and mental capacity to do this correctly before you said yes?
Well, absolutely, because one of the things that I had learned and espoused was, with our team, we have always asked each person to make a commitment, you know, and make a promise. You had to personally say, yes, I contribute to what we're trying to do. I'm going to earn everybody's respect and trust by the way I practice and I play. Well, you'd be hypocritical if you're asking your team to do that and you do not. So the first person that I always checked was my own involvement. Was I getting at this thing to the best of my ability? And that personalization led me through all those years. You mentioned the 200 games. Well, the way I looked at it was, if it's a 9-inning game, I took it half inning at 18 innings. I treated like it's the last inning of the World Series. And so I've experienced that. I know how deep you have to get for that. That's not why I retired. And coming back, you're right. I looked at it very hard because you don't want to, I wouldn't do anything to disrespect the Chicago White Sox or, Jerry, Kenny, and Rick in this opportunity. So the neatest thing I can tell you is the last few days as it's gotten, there've been hurdles right along. The last few days as it's gotten closer, and I could start to think, maybe this is going to happen. Yeah, it's probably going to happen. My internal response has been excitement. I haven't had the first regret. I'm fired up. I'm ready to go. I'm anxious to get with the players. I want to show them, what I represent as a person, as a professional. I want to do the same with our staff. So my answer is I was concerned. I faced it, and I passed my test. Now, I'm going to give you one more thing, which I've told many young managers. The way you survive is if you just look in the mirror and you say you did your best. If you are tough on yourself, then you're immune to all the other criticism, because you're going to get it. You're going to get hassled. I mean, look at Kevin Cash. Made a decision, didn't work, bad decision. If it worked, good decision. That's been true for years. So I personalize it, and I've been very pleased that lately I'm fired up with no regrets.
Next question from the New York Times, Tyler Kepner. Go ahead, Tyler.
Hey, Tony, congratulations. Happy for you.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you, when you have that day in Cooperstown and you are put into the Hall of Fame, it's the ultimate cap to a career. You had the incredible Game 7, finishing off with St. Louis as a world champ. Did you think that in your heart that you would ever get that chance again? Did you think you wanted it again?
I thought I'd probably get the chance. I didn't think I would want it. My friends know this. The happiest people today are Elaine and Bianca and Devin. They wanted me to continue managing. I left. I'm being mysterious. It's just not real reason to talk about it. The biggest reason or two that I had enough. I had looked at it and I thought, well, 5 years from now, it's still going to be true. And it has been true. I didn't realize till I got upstairs how much I would miss it. And years later, I never thought that I would get this opportunity, not just to walk back into a club that's so ready to win, but to be back in Chicago. Because that first experience, the way they treat the people was my first family. And the way the fans, once we got it going, the passion of the White Sox fans, it all came together. So the answer is, on Cooperstown Day, I didn't think, I thought I might get asked. I didn't think I'd come back, and it's slowly been changing.
Next question from the Associated Press is Andy Seligman. Go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, hi, Tony. Congratulations. Getting back to what you were saying before about, relating to the players on the team right now. Just wondering, how have your views changed over the years, and if in any way working with Joe Maddon had an impact on that?
It's a good question. What's changed, I think, is, and it's changed because of what I've observed. In 2016, there wasn't many players that were stepping forward and confronting, the injustices which have existed for years. But my concern, my feeling about, how you respect those that give, like right now, I have great respect for law enforcement, for first responders, the military. I mean, nothing has changed. What's evolved is that players are really stepping forward. And you asked a great question about Joe. I think that during the time before we started spring training, that when Joe got the entire roster together on a Zoom call and confronted the issues of what's happening societally, not the celebrations. I thought the way he handled it was so masterful that really gave our club an understanding of how they would come together and go forward. And I would use a very similar approach.
Next question from the Chicago Sun-Times, Daryl Van Scowen. Go ahead, Daryl.
Hey, this is for Tony. How far along, Tony, are you in terms of putting your staff together? And have you reached out to any of the guys who were on Renteria's staff about possibly coming back?
Well, I don't know which is the priority of the staff or the players. The players are always a priority, but I think the first meaningful conversation will be about the staff, and we're just starting. I mean, and this has happened. This isn't a long process. This happened in the last 2 or 3 days. It's for sure. So, in discussions with Kenny and Rick, probably get Jerry involved if we have to. We treat. I mentioned early on. I mentioned it in another conversation. The importance of a coaching staff at the major league level today is vital. And it was vital in 1979 when I first got the job, in 1981 when Jerry first took over. Jerry was one of the first owners that I know that realized that coaches were just not fungo hitters and friends of the manager. So every place that I've been, whether it was Mr. Haas or Bill DeWitt, they've always honored the coaches. So the point I'm making is that the conversations that we're going to have about the staff are really important. And I would tell you that one of the priorities that we have all agreed on is, wherever possible, continuity. When you have something as good as what the White Sox had going last year, and especially that culture in the clubhouse and the coaches that were a part of that, that's going to be looked at very closely, respected. And we'll see if there are some spots available. Then we're going to look very carefully at that, how important that choice would be to add to what we have.
Next question from NPR, Cheryl Ray Stout.
Hi, Tony. It's been a long time since we've talked. Tony, talking about specifically back to your staff, you do not have a pitching coach at this time. You did reach out to Dave Ducker, from what we understand from a report. Do you have somebody specifically in mind for that job?
Well, I told, probably not kiddingly, I was kidding at first, but then more seriously, for years I've told Dave if he comes back, I'd come back. We were always laughing about it. The answer is Dave's not coming back. I don't have anybody specific, but the most important point to make is, when you look at our ball club with after all these years of service, there's a huge vacancy. Pitching has got so much potential and so important to the success, not just of 2021, but going forward, that we're going to be very open-minded about who the choice is. I know that there's a lot of confidence in Kurt in the bullpen. So it may be that, we just need one choice, not two, but we're just getting into that process, and it's going to have the highest priority. Looking forward to making that choice. And it's going to be a difficult one, because I've already seen a few texts where I've gotten some, I haven't read the text, but I know that some are checking in.
Next question from the Chicago Tribune, Paul Sullivan.
Hey, Tony. Rick addressed this a little bit, but could you talk about your relationship with Jerry? And there is a perception that you two are so close that this was kind of because he's your buddy.
Well, I don't know how many of you have been fired, and if you've gotten fired, how close you could ever be to the person that just decimated my family, my wife and little girls, and who wouldn't talk to him for years. That's a little bit tongue in cheek, but not totally. It would be, I think that if there was any truth to what you're saying, Paul, it would be, it would be really not reading Jerry Reinsdorf at all correctly. His major interest on the baseball side is what's best for the Chicago White Sox and the fans that we're hoping to drive into our ballpark in droves. Any past relationship or current relationship he's had with me over the years, I mean, there are other opportunities to hire me, and I wasn't hired, by the way. So there's nothing different now. I think in Jerry's case, and the reason I'm here is that I think that Kenny and Rick believe that I'm the guy that gets the choice. So I don't think relationship had. I think the only way it worked was that we have talked baseball for 20 some years, and he understands how much I love the game, and I understand how much he loves it. Beyond that, I don't think it's a factor.
Next question, also from the Chicago Tribune, Lamont Pope.
Hello, Tony. Yeah, what are some of those traits and makeups of this team that drew you on back?
I think if you took the ideal mix, if you were overly veteran or overly young, you would have a lot of sage experience, but you probably, you don't have the youthful enthusiasm. If you're real young, you'd come out and guys would play as hard as they could, maybe run into themselves because they don't have the benefit experience. So what you look for ideally is to have a mix of the veterans and the young. And then you have the guys that are, that are still young, but are right in the prime of their careers. And that describes the White Sox. They have, I know it's been said here, and I've heard it from others. They have a real good situation inside that clubhouse because the mix is so good. That's because players have taken charge. And one of the things I hadn't been mentioned here today, one of the first lessons that I learned as a manager, and it happened in the 80s with the White Sox because of Carlton Fisk, Greg Luzinski, Tom Paciorek, and Jerry Koosman. The value of clubhouse leaders and taking charge of that clubhouse and then coordinating with the coaching staff and the manager is invaluable. The rest of my career, if you look at any place, we always actively, as a staff, work to create that kind of relationship with leaders in the clubhouse. So one of the things that I think is so important here is the mix that they have here. We can realistically think, we can go in there next in 2021 with as good a chance to win as anybody. Why not us?
Next question from ESPN, Jesse Rogers.
It's for Rick. A couple weeks ago, Rick, you said that you didn't necessarily envision yourself being a GM in 10 years because the game's always changing, something to that effect. Does that apply to the dugout? And did that give you any pause that Tony hadn't managed in about a decade?
Based on the conversations that we were able to have with Tony, no. And then part of what I said was tongue in cheek that day. I think I also said that my wife had a list of replacements for me somewhere in my house that day. So not everything was quite as literal. However, we obviously discussed it with Tony where he was at, and you've heard from him personally and gotten to see his level of commitment, energy, and focus on what lies ahead. And that quickly alleviated any of those potential concerns.
Next question from NBC Sports Chicago, Ryan McGuffey.
My question is actually for both Tony and Rick. Tony, start with you. You literally have a Hall of Fame resume, but I guess the fit part of this is probably a question that's worth asking. How do you fit 10 years after you've retired with 22, 23, 24-year-olds now than you did then? And then Rick, at what point did you know that, yes, Tony La Russa is the right fit?
Rick, you want to go first? Who goes first?
Tony, you can go ahead first.
I'll go first. Well, the way I would answer it was, towards the end of my career, I was in my 60s, right? The last 5 years, 60, 65. And our clubs in St. Louis had the same array of young guys, prime guys, and veterans. And there was no I mean, I let them speak for it rather than me. I'll just tell you what they would say is that the environment, the culture we had, the relationships that were built between our staff, me included with them, it worked. And I haven't changed, X number of years later. The club is going to have young, going to have prime, it's going to have older guys. And I know that I'm going to work hard, and so will our staff. And I said this before, and the players all laugh, but it's true. Every year you start with the respect, trust at zero, and you have to work every day to earn it. And I did it for years. And I'm going to try very hard to do it. And the players will decide, but I know if I come at them with what I've learned and how I feel about putting that team in a good position to succeed, I think it'll happen.
Congratulations, Tony. The schedule has you playing in St. Louis this year. After all the years you spent there, how do you think that's going to feel?
I didn't know. I asked somebody the other day, and what's the National League teams, and I don't know what the answer was, but I know it was a central. How would it be to be in St. Louis? I know that if I had the birds on the bat, I'd be part of the family. If I don't have it on, then I think it's going to be the opposition, and they're going to hope that we get beat. And I applaud both. I know the fans will be passionate. I have thought, by the way, one of the minuses of this job is that opening day in St. Louis, I won't be there to go with the Clydesdales, and I won't be in Cooperstown for the Hall of Fame. Those are two great situations that I look forward to, and I'm going to miss them. But it'll be interesting to go to St. Louis. They're going to hope we get swept, and I'm going to hope that they play very well, but we sweep them.